Hello and welcome to week 2 of English 110 Literature and Ideas. This week we're covering the other chapters in the book that are about short story and how to read short stories and get deeper understanding out of them. You may think 2 weeks is an awfully short period of time to grasp how to read and understand everything there is to know about short stories, and you would be right. One of the reasons I gave you a link to the crash course videos, and I hope that spurs you to other watching more of them, is this is a very long process. There's a reason people become English majors and can spend forever learning how to do this. Is when I said that humans are the people who are the animals that tell stories, we don't just tell a story sometimes. Sometimes this story is just about what happens in it, what characters are doing things, and what the plot is. But quite often we're trying to say something else. And that is a lot of what these readings are is not only do specific choices of setting matter for a story, how we place things, when we place things, what do we focus on in the setting? I mean, do you focus on how beautiful setting is, how dismal a setting is, the time period, what's going on around the time period, just a certain bit of nostalgia, whatever it is. Or if you're doing a fantastical setting, if you're doing a science fiction setting or a fantasy setting or a horror setting, all of those can be very specific things that the author is trying to say. For example, if you're trying to do a setting about something, an important emotional drama that's happening on a windswept ocean shore, well, somebody else might tell a similar story in the exact same setting that's about happiness and how they feel hope for the world. And so they're going to focus on sunlight and waves and beautiful and that sort of thing. Whereas somebody focusing on the dismal stuff is going to focus on the gray storms and how the waves are pounding endlessly and all that sort of stuff. So the things about setting that you can pay attention to are always about what is being said, what is being focused on when an author tells you about a setting. Same thing with tone and style. And some of what I was talking about with tone is the emotional tenor of the piece, how it feels, what you think the author is trying to get you to feel. Quite often, tone can sometimes be contrary, so it may look like it's gray and dismal, but something is actually hopeful inside of it, and that's there to contrast. So it can be very deep and complex. And style also is part of that. Is do I use short clip sentences like Ernest Hemingway often does? Do I use long, decursive, flowing sentences with beautiful words? That's called purple prose. And what are you trying to say with that? What is the message you're trying to convey? Some people do things that are called pastiches. So, for example, if you read a old style noir detective piece in which the main character is kind of has a gruff harsh tone and there's always something wrong going on, and that woman is really going to be the death of me and all that sort of stuff. That's the style that's trying to convey a certain idea of what kind of story you're talking about. And again, style can be very complex. You can have styles that are contrast to what's going on around you. One of my favorite movies, for example, is a movie called Brick, which is a set in a high school. A high school kid is trying to solve a crime, but it's all told with the classic 1950s detective noir style. So that's the kind of things you can think about as well. I mean, certain authors and certain screenwriters and stuff have a very distinctive style. You can pick up a book by a certain person, and if they are very distinct, you can immediately get a sense of what kind of story it is. So those are very important to pay attention to, knowing how this works and what the effect is on the audience member. And of course, theme. Theme is what is it about? And sometimes theme is very obvious and kind of smacks you in the face, like Kurt Vonnegut's Harrison Bergeron, which I consider one of Kurt Vonnegut's most infamous stories. It's a short story and it's a very effective story, but it's also infamous because there is no way he is hiding what he's talking about here. He's talking about how the world is trying to keep exceptional people down, and if they would just take the chains off those exceptional people, could fly. Um, Very obvious what he's doing. Not all things are that obvious. And the tricky thing is we often focus on it in these kinds of courses, but it is not the most important thing. Especially because the longer, the more thoughtful the story is, the more themes you can get out of it. It is possible, even with something simple like, pick any of the Oscar winners that just came out last night. Yeah, if you pick any of those movies, you might be able to find something simple in it, but you could also find 10, 20 smaller themes. Here's this one character's theme. Here's what's going on with this. So that's one of those things is theme can be as complex or as simple as you want to look at. It's useful to identify themes, but is not the end all and be all of understanding literature. Same thing with symbols. Some symbols are very obvious what they mean, but some symbols can be obscure, almost intentionally obscure. And by that I mean some authors like to play little guessing games with people and put something in there, and maybe they have a reason why it's there. Maybe they want it to mean something, but quite often they're doing it so that people will think that they're deep and clever and that they understand things at a different level. And it's symbols are useful tools, but again, focusing on them too much can end up leading you down the wrong path. What they can do is you're so busy trying to catch all these little clues, what's going on, you sometimes can miss the full on overall idea of things. And of course, don't forget that on Monday, the assignment, quote unquote, for Monday, which you don't actually have to answer any questions or do anything for, are all additional readings that you can use to for assignments. So, of course, obviously, I have a bunch of my other thoughts about these. Again, a lot of these are to talk about how these concepts are useful, but all of them, deep understanding of stories is using the right pieces of these and not focusing deeply or all about one thing. It is much better to be holistic and look at multiple aspects than just one thing at a time. You can, as a former graduate student in English, let me tell you, you can get really, really deep into some of these things. But sometimes it doesn't. It does just kind of go down the rabbit hole. It isn't getting you anywhere new or interesting. It's just what if this means this. So if you've looked at the assignment for this week, you're going to be making a mock presentation. I'm not obviously we can't have you go up in front of a classroom and do presentations because it's online, and I don't think everybody's going to have time to sit there and look at everybody's presentations. I encourage you to do so if you think you can. It's always useful to get feedback. It's always one of the best things about the taking classes like this is you can distill your ideas and explain them to somebody else, and that can help you learn much better. Trust me, you never know something quite as well as when you have to teach it to somebody else. And so, what you're going to do here is you're going to write both a speech outline and then you're going to create about 7 to 10 slides for either PowerPoint or Prezi style presentation. You're all of you have worked in professional fields before, so you or you've taken classes before, so you know how to get to PowerPoint. If you don't know Prezi that well, it is a free for a couple of uses in software that will let you put together a very pretty, can have lots of animations and builds a lot of stuff for you in advance so that you can go through and not have to worry so much about layout and so much about how I'm going to make this go to here and all that sort of stuff, and kind of makes presentations look a little bit prettier. It can be lots of distractions and stuff. I once had a student who used Prezi to twist this screen around each time they were going to another slide and made everybody feel kind of nauseous as they were watching it. But it is another easy way of putting together presentation stuff and can actually be more interesting to look at it in the long run. What you're going to do here is if you I was going to put on a presentation, how am I going to do this? And remember one of the things that makes presentations useful, and that's why I gave you a couple links to design tips and stuff for this, is understand how what makes a presentation useful. You've all had to sit through boring presentations, and quite often boring presentations have lots of text. They have bullet points. They're all down there. Bullet points, by the way, it says here ditch the bullet points. I disagree. You can use bullet points, but the bullet points can't be all of the idea here. Bullet points have to illustrate a concept and they have to be punchy. So if you put I've had more than one person in classes put a bullet point and then like a paragraph long quote by the bullet point one. That's not a bullet point. I mean, that bullet point is there to try and get an idea across real fast. So pay attention to the design tips. Think about ways to make a presentation more interesting, and will and try to use some images, try to use some videos, try to use things that, but don't use just stock footage of stuff. If you pick an image to go with a concept, think about what the image is saying. Think about what the concept you're trying to convey is. So just try to throw all that together. And obviously, the speech outline is also going to be important. And if you haven't had to do this, think about this. This is a good example right here of how speech outlines can be put together, that sort of thing. You don't have to write a speech in detail here, and I'd rather you didn't. I'm certain you'd rather you didn't either. I'd prefer you give yourself some things like here's how I'd introduce things. Here's the idea I'm trying to get across in my thesis statement, and then here's some rough facts. Write it as if you're going to expand on it when you're giving a speech. If you've given any speeches in real time in real life, you know that you don't just read off of a page. That's one of the most boring ways to give a speech. What you do is you glance at the page and see what the information there is, and then you try to expand on it, kind of like I do here when I'm doing these videos. You look at a fact that's before you, and then you try to explain it and expand around it. Now, this is worth 40 points, 70 points total. Or sorry, 80 points total. It's the outline is worth 40 points, the presentation is worth 20 points, and you're going to have to respond to a couple of them, and that's worth 10 points each. I am not going to grade super. I'm not going to be a real stickler for this. This is kind of a unusual assignment. What I want you to do is do your best effort in explaining these ideas in a way that helps you understand them better and would help somebody else understand them better. And obviously, you're picking a story. It's not the same one you did. It's not the same story you used last week. It's a different story. But again, show that you can analyze something. You can think about it deeply. You can point out interesting ideas about it. Um, and that's all we're after here. So as long as you do a good faith effort and you don't hand me something that's 200 words and 5 slides and it's nothing but bullet points and it's boring, you're probably going to get a pretty decent grade on this. And the last thing, of course, is the discussion forum. One thing about discussion forums I'm going to explain to you is when I grade a discussion forum, I go through and put in the rankings and ratings for your posts, which will give you your points, and then I do a quick response. I usually have that response up by Wednesday of the following week, so that you can see how I responded to your previous discussions, encouraging certain ideas, discouraging certain other ideas. And I usually do one post that kind of collects all my thoughts. I used to try to respond to every thread, and frankly, that got to be a lot of work, and most people didn't read all my responses. So it'll be one long response for everything. Also, in terms of getting assignments back, obviously I try to do the discussion forums by the Wednesday of the following week, and I have until Sunday, the next Sunday, to finish grading the assignments. But I'll try to get them done before then. I'll try to get them done by Thursday or Friday, so you at least have a couple of days of seeing my feedback before you have to hand in the next assignment. Um, if you have any questions, again, email me or let me know in some other way. I hope you have a good week, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.